Hello everyone, my name is Ziquan. Today let's talk about something I learned from web development. Before we get started, let's talk about the preview of this video. So the first part I want to talk about is the mental map of web development. And then we're gonna talk about the broad description of all the concepts and how they play together, and that will be 10 minutes long. And next, we're gonna have a deep dive in a specific concept, which will be Node.js, and that will be 10 minutes long. In this part, I will have a creative contribution, which is Node.js and food analogy. So basically, I will use a food analogy to explain some basic knowledge about Node.js. And the last part, I will do a live coding demonstration, and that will be 5 minutes long. Okay, so let's talk about our mental map. So basically, in the web development world, I will focus on 4 parts. So first of all is the front-end development, the second back-end development, and then architectures, and the last is deployment. Okay, let's do the front-end development first. So I will basically talk about 4 important components. So first one, HTML5, second one, CSS, and then JavaScript, and then forms. And also inside of CSS part, I will also talk a little bit about the Bootstrap.js. And then in the second part is backend development. So we will talk about the server types, the Node.js, the database. So for the server types, we have a static server, and also we have the dynamic server. So basically, the dynamic server, for example, it will use Node and Express to serve dynamic content. That will be one kind of dynamic server. And also we have some others dynamic servers. And for the Node.js, basically it is a runtime environment for the JavaScript, so it can run on the server side. And also, basically, the Node.js will normally combine with Express. So Express is a framework to build web applications in Node. So basically, Node.js and Express will play together, so it can be more faster. Yeah. And for the database, we have the relational database and the NoSQL database. So in this video, we will mostly focus on Mongo, which is a NoSQL database. We will talk this in details later. And then we will go to architectures. It basically have 2 kinds. One is the client side, and the other is the server side. So for the client side, basically it is the browser executing JavaScript, rendering HTML and CSS. And for the server side, the server will process requests and returning data. So the main difference of these two is for the client side, the browser will do the thing, and for the server side, the server will do the things. We will also talk more details about this later. And then for the last part, we will talk about the deployment. So what is deployment? So when we finished creating our project, we have to make it like online or make it go live, so the users can use any computer or any devices to really run and try your product. So that is why we need the deployment. So for the deployment, we have various tools we can use to make your project go live. So what I will talk about are render, Heroku, and MongoDB Atlas. So in my recent project, I used MongoDB Atlas to deploy the database, and then for the render. So basically, the MongoDB Atlas will deploy the backend. Let me change the backend. And for the render, it'll deploy the front end. Okay, we will talk about more details about this in later. Yeah. Okay, now let's talk about more details about front-end development, which you can imagine that as a user's canvas. So if you look at the funny picture here, we can imagine the front end as a human. So the HTML will give the human a skeleton, and the CSS will determine how the person looks like, and then the JavaScript will determine how the human will behave. Okay, now let's jump into the computer science world. So what is HTML? It is a standard markup language for creating web pages. So it is not about the iOS language. It's only for the web pages. And it can define the structure and the content of your web. And for the CSS, it can style the content by your HTML. And also, it can be enhanced with frameworks. So one of the famous framework is Bootstrap. So the Bootstrap can make designing responsive sites easier. And then let's go to JavaScript. So as we said before, JavaScript can make pages interactive. So for example, if the user wanna click a button, and it will show maybe a picture, and that what JavaScript will do. And ES6 refers to a version of JavaScript with new features, and that is what we mostly do nowadays. So last part is forms. The reason why I include that in front-end development, it is because it is a client-side form of handling, and it can allow users to submit data to the server. So that's pretty important. And forms typically combines HTML for the structure and JavaScript for the interactivity. So if front end is the curtain, the back end will be something behind the curtain, just like the picture here. So if front end represents the front of the stitched clothes, the back end will be the back of the clothes. So you can see that it's kind of messy and complicated. That's exactly in the computer science world what backend development will look like. So we can talk about four important concepts. One is server types, one is Node.js, one is database, and one is architectures in the backend development. So the server types, we have the static server and the dynamic server. So for the static server, it can serve the static HTML files, and for the dynamic server, it can use Node.js and Express to serve the dynamic content. And for the Node.js, so Node.js is not a language, and also it's not a framework, and it's not a library, but it's a runtime environment for JavaScript on the server side. So before Node.js, JavaScript is basically a client side language, but now we have the Node.js. It can now run on personal computer in the local side. So normally Node.js can play with Express. So Express is a framework to build the web applications in Node, and it can make the Node faster. And we also have database. So for the database, we have the relational database and non-SQL database. So usually relational database is the SQL database, and the main difference between the relational database and non-SQL database is that relational database is more formatted. So you can see that it's like a table. It's like this. So if you want to use more formatted data, you probably need to use the relational database. And for the non-SQL database, if you want to have the data that's not that formatted, like for example, if you want to have like this kind of data, like it's not really a table like, so you can use a non-SQL database. And the advantage of non-SQL database is that it's quicker than the relational database. And for the architectures, we have client side and server side. So for the client side, the browser can execute JavaScript and rendering HTML and CSS. But for the server side, server will do the things. And also for the architectures, we have a picture here. So basically, we can see that so the browser side will be the client side, and the web server and the files will be the server side. So what they will play together is that the browser will send the HTTP request to the web server, and the files, which are the pre-created HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and other files, and all the data will be sent to the web server, and then the web server will return the HTTP response to the browser. So the client or the user can see the contents they want to see in the browser side. Okay, now let's talk about the deployment. So let's focus on three common used deployment tool. So the first one is MongoDB Atlas, the second one is Render, and the last one is Heroku. So if you want to deploy your database, you can definitely use MongoDB Atlas. So one thing that is really important is that you cannot expose your credential, like your password or your maybe username, to the MongoDB Atlas. So when you want to push, just cannot expose credentials like password or username. So for example, if you wanna push something to GitHub, you cannot push the MongoDB Atlas username or password, or someone will see and hack your password and username and do some bad things. And also for the Render, Render is a free platform that you can host your web apps, APIs, database, and more. So yeah, if you wanna use it, you can check it out. And for Heroku, it is a cloud platform that can let you deploy, run, and manage your applications. But one disadvantage of this is that it can cost $3 per month for the deployment. So if you wanna use some free tool, you can consider Render and MongoDB Atlas. This is also free. But Render and Mongo Atlas, it's a little bit harder to deploy than Heroku. So it depends on your decision and budgets. Okay, now we already learned so many concepts in web development. Now let's see how they can play together. So first of all, we have the user access. So if a user wanna access a website through their browser, this action will actually send a request to the server. And then the server responds. So the server will possibly use Node.js with Express, determines which data or page to send back to the browser. Next, we have the database query. So if your web will need the dynamic content, the server will query a database like the MongoDB to obtain the necessary data. And then the server will also send the HTML page to the browser. This page could be styled with CSS and might use the Bootstrap for the consistent appearance. So after we have all the information prepared, it will render on the browser. So the browser renders the HTML and CSS, and indirectly the form submissions or animations will be handled by JavaScript. So after that, we have the user interaction and cycle repeat. For example, if a user wanna have more interaction with the browser, it will require new data. For example, the form submission. And now the new request will be sent to the server and starting the new cycle. Okay, now we already learned many concepts in general in web development. Now let's have a deep dive into a specific concept, which is Node.js. So Node.js, it is not a language or a framework or a library, but it is a runtime environment that can allow JavaScript to run outside a browser, mainly on the server side. So what does it mean? So basically it means before we have Node.js, JavaScript can only run in the browser, which make it primarily a client-side language. But in 2009, Ryan Dahl introduced Node.js. So Node.js filled the gap for the server-side JavaScript execution. So it is kind of revolutionary because it's unified the web development, because it's allow developers to use the same language, which is JavaScript, to use the same language to run both on the front end and the back end. Okay, how about we explain Node in a creative way? So I'd like to use a food analogy to introduce how Node.js works. So we all know that if a user wanna have some interaction with the browser, we will have the API requests from the user, and we probably need Express.js and Node.js to play together. And obviously we will need JavaScript because that is the language that will be used in the Express and Node. So to use a food analogy, the API will be like a customer order, and Express will be the wait stuff, and the Node.js will be the pizza chef, and the JavaScript will be the pizza ingredient. Okay, let's talk about it in details. So first of all, the API request the user sent will be like a customer come to the pizza restaurant and have some order. So the order can sometimes be very straightforward. Like the customer may say like I want like a cheese pizza, but sometimes the customer may have some more complex order. Like I want to have a pepperoni, like half pepperoni, half veggie with extra cheese. So it's kind of complex to understand and to make. So like this customer order is like a API request the user or the client will send to the browser. So now the Express.js will take the responsibility. So in the restaurant, it will be like a waitress or a waiter. So so its role to take orders, communicates them with the chef, and then serves the pizzas. So the specialty of Node.js or the wait stuff is that it knows the menu inside out, so it's very familiar with the menu. So when a customer asks for a special route, like a half and half pizza or combo, the wait staff can quickly understand and communicate with the order efficiently. So that is why we need Express.js with nodes to play together and make the request more efficiently. Okay, so now is the most important part, the Node.js. So Node.js is more like a pizza chef, so it can cook the pizza. So and yeah, and also it should prepare the pizza based on the orders, right? So in the technical world, the Node.js should solve or deal with the data based on the requests. So what is the specialty for Node.js or the pizza chef? So we need to know that it is an event driven. So what does that mean? So in the pizza restaurant, the pizza chef can prepare multiple pizzas simultaneously, which means they can prepare multiple pizzas at one time. So the pizza chef will not finish one pizza before starting another. That is non-blocking. So basically, all the pizzas can be made at one time. So that is non-blocking and event-driven. So what is the advantage of doing that? It is the efficiency. So by doing that, the Node.js can deal with the request faster. Okay, so let's think about Node.js core features in technical way. So like what we talked before, it is event driven and single threaded, and we also need to talk about what is npm. So like what we talked before, event driven architecture means Node.js can use events to trigger certain actions, which can make it highly efficient. And also non-blocking means that Node.js can handle many operations simultaneously without waiting for one to finish. And that is what the chef do, right? And also it is single-threaded, so it is one of big advantage for play together with the event-driven nature. And the single-threaded feature can avoid the content switching and make optimal use of system resources. And also we need to talk about npm. So what is npm? It is short for Node Package Manager. So it is basically the default package manager for Node.js, and it's also the world's largest software registry that can provide lots of libraries and tools. Yeah, so After have pretty much explanation on Node.js, let's talk about JavaScript, which is the pizza ingredients. So we all know that Node.js is basically a server, not a server, but a helper, right, for writing JavaScript, because it can help JavaScript to run on the backend. So JavaScript, it is a core component that can make the pizza. So what is the specialty of JavaScript? So it is the building blocks for the web app, just like the dough is the key ingredients for making pizza. Okay, let's talk about the use cases. So like we said before, it is the web application backend. So we can use a frameworks like Express.js that can simplify the process for setting up a server and defining routes. And also it can be used in real-time applications, such like chat app, right? And that is because Node has a non-blocking architecture that is perfect for handling many simultaneous connections. And also we can talk about APIs and microservices, because Node.js is very lightweight, so it can efficiently handle many I/O operations, making it great for RESTful services and microservice architectures. So there are a lot of advantages for Node.js. So one is performance, one is consistency, and one is the community. So for the performance, Node.js has a core feature for non-blocking, right? So it can handle many requests simultaneously without slowing down. So that is very fast and can do things simultaneously. And also it is good for the consistency. So it can use JavaScript for both the client side and the server side. So it can be cleaner and more consistent. And also, a lot of people use Node.js, so it has a active community. So the community can have a lot of support, continuous updates, and can have readily available solutions to the common problems. In conclusion, there are some basic Node.js knowledge I want to talk about. So one is the JavaScript runtime environment. That is what the Node.js is. And Node.js can also extend the reach of JavaScript to the server side from the client side. And Node.js can also unify the development process, because it's now one language for both sides. So basically all this makes Node.js vital for web development.